different brands can have different opt-in rates based off kind of the intent of the customers that come onto the store. Klaviyo defines healthy as somewhere between 1 to 5%, whereas for us, typically 10 to 15% tends to be pretty good for us.
3 years ago, Shaan Arora was knocking at shop doors in New York City, asking strangers whether they were on Shopify. Today, Alia processes over 100 million pop-up views per month, counts Nike, Milk Makeup, Peloton, Hot Ones among its clients, and just got acquired. Here's what caught my attention. The brands Shaan works with are getting 10 to 15% email opt-in rates from their pop-ups. Most of the brands I talk to are happy if they're getting 8%. The difference is not the tool. It's how they're using it, what they're actually testing, and what they understand about why someone would give them their email. Shaan bootstrapped Alia from 0 to 8 million in revenue in a single year. No investors, no debt, profitable from day one. And then Dotdigital came knocking. We talk about what a good pop-up program actually looks like, what the highest impact tests are, why mystery discounts keep outperforming standard offers, and what Shaan would do differently if he were starting again today. We also get into the acquisition side of things, because there's a lot founders assume what makes a business actually attractive for buyers that is just flat out wrong. Let's get into it. Shaan, how are you doing?
Hey, doing well. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, excited to have you on. I mean, you bootstrapped Alia, scaled it to thousands of brands, and also just got acquired by Dotdigital. Congrats for that. And before we go into the story, what do you believe most ecom founders fundamentally misunderstand about pop-ups?
I think they don't see it as a growth lever. If you can get your pop-up correct, and you can actually get your list size not only larger, but more valuable and higher intent, to massive revenue unlock. Most brands kind of use the Klaviyo pop-up, PostScript attentive, whatever the ESP is, they use that pop-up. But if you try to use a paid pop-up, specifically using Alia, you'll see a world of a difference.
If a brand is, I assume it's tough to say, but let's say brand is spending $100K per month on ads. Like, what would you say? What is the invisible cost of a bad pop-up strategy?
Yeah, I mean, it could definitely, it depends how large the brand is, but if your opt-in rate is something like 1 or 2% and you get something like 300,000 visitors per month on the site, and you can get that number from 2 to 4%, just by simply doubling the opt-in rate, you can generate thousands of extra dollars in revenue.
Yeah. I mean, especially long term. I mean, obviously, on the one side, if you acquire the emails right away, you get like more purchases right away, because a lot of those people, they see the email and they will buy quicker, and you'll get them to convert faster. But also, obviously, long term, like if you have a way bigger email list, the leverage of that is way higher. And then like when next Black Friday comes up, when Q4 comes up, where you have like a lot of people that have a very high intent to buy something, having a big email list is just a huge, huge asset for the business.
Yeah, 100%.
In your experience, like what should a healthy email capture rate look like, depending on like the traffic source?
Yeah, exactly, right. Like I think it's one of those things where if different brands can have different opt-in rates based off kind of the intent of the customers that come onto the store. Klaviyo defines healthy as somewhere between 1 to 5%, whereas for us, we typically see closer to 10 to 15%. So I'd say somewhere between 5 to 15% tends to be a good number. Of course, there's just like kind of a good amount of stipulations that go into that. But yeah, typically 10 to 15% tends to be pretty good for us.
Well, 15% sounds like a lot. I mean, most brands that we work with, they're like happy in their like 8% range, maybe sometimes going up to 10, but 15 is a lot.
Yeah, 100%. And it's not like you guess that right away. Sometimes it takes a bit of iteration and testing, but that tends to be a good number for our brands.
Yeah. And how do you think brands can get there? I mean, obviously, on the one side, do it like using the proper tool for the pop-up, and then like just consistently testing, or what do you see as the best tools to increase it?
Yeah, I mean, I think testing is important. I think a lot of brands don't test, which is totally fine. So what we do is we kind of do white glove onboarding where we can run the test for the brand instead of the brand having to kind of guess what's going to be the most effective. I'm happy to share tips on what we see as the most effective strategies, like so brands can try it out themselves. But testing it and actually kind of like caring about testing it on a schedule tends to be quite important. We have this thing called smart testing where it runs tests by itself, so that the brands don't need to think about, hey, what test should I be running? And by doing it consistently and testing the right things, you can see significant uplift.
And how does the smart testing figure out like what to test?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, right? So we have we get close to over 100 million views of our pop-ups per month on our brand's website. So we have a ton of data that we use. So we have a schedule. It's like, hey, the first thing you should test is the copy. The second thing you should test is the time delay of when the pop-up comes up. The third thing is maybe an image. The fourth thing is maybe removing the X button. Right. So we kind of have a system just working with so many brands. So hey, these 3 or 4 tests are the highest impact tests. And if you can do those early on, you'll see the most alpha from those specific things. And then instead of the brand having to manually sit there and run every test, we actually just have the AI and it runs the test for the brand.
Okay. And what do you usually see has the biggest lift on the conversion rate?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. I'd say copy, right? Like, hey, simple thing, right? Like you've got 10% off or you've earned 10% off, right? Like simple things like that can actually make a pretty big difference. And, you can even be like, hey, instead of saying you've got 10% off or you got 5% off, try something like, hey, here's a mystery discount, or here's a gift, here's a mystery gift, right? So like that copy also works well, where it's like, hey, whether or not the offer is 10%, 20%, 5%, like the customer doesn't necessarily know, but because it's a mystery gift, they're pretty interested in seeing what's behind the curtain. So mystery gift is a good one for sure. Works with a lot of our brands. And if some brands are not really into mystery gifts, you can do other things like subscribe for special drops, right? And like for us, we don't force any brands to do any kind of discounting. If they don't want to do discounts, we can find ways to get creative and still get high opt-in rates without needing to destroy your margins.
Max also talked a lot about the mystery discounts. Like he said that those are currently crushing it for their clients, and that they're doing them like in the pop-ups and also in the like cart abandoned flows and checkout abandoned flows. That like mystery discounts are just way better than having like a normal like 20% off discount.
Exactly. Yeah, it's definitely something good to A/B test, right? Because like if you're giving a 20 or 25% off, sometimes that can beat a mystery discount because like that number is quite large. However, if you don't have something that's closer to 10 or 5% or 10% off, it's sometimes better to put the mystery discount because that's not as big as an incentive, right? So like it kind of depends on what you're comfortable doing, but it is something worthwhile to A/B test, and pretty much we test with the majority of our brands that we work with.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I was curious. I was surprised. He also told me that they are even like doing the mystery discount all the way to the checkout. So usually, how I knew that before is like you get the mystery discount, you sign up to the email list, and then in the email it will say you get like 15% off. But they actually also like keep it a mystery discount until someone checks out. So they have to add the product to cart, then enter the discount code, and only then they find out what the discount is, and then they're already like so far into the process that they just end up like purchasing. So that was interesting.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah,
I mean,
I've seen that. I've seen that before. Yeah.
Yeah. What other offers do you see crushing it right now? I mean, there are like discounts. There's like the gift. There's also like a quiz or like a free. Have you ever seen like those free PDFs or lead magnets work? Because Max said he never saw those work for e-commerce.
Yeah, like it's not the best offer. I mean, if you're going to be offering a PDF, it has to be at least relevant, right? And even then, it's going to be hard to get people to want that, right? Like for example, let's say you sell like collagen, right? And like you want to offer a PDF on like the best workouts, right? Like the best workouts to lose belly fat. Okay, that's like relevant enough, right? If I'm looking for collagen, I'm probably looking to lose some belly fat. So like that makes sense. And if it's valuable, it could work. Also, it's a way to not have to give out discounts. And if you can find a valuable PDF that costs you nothing to serve, obviously it costs you nothing because it's a PDF, and you still get the email, like it's a win-win. Just knowing that, hey, if I were to offer 15% off, I would get more signups than if I was offering a PDF. You also save 15% margin, right? So it's kind of the trade-off there. So yes, of course, it's not going to work as well as a 15% off discount, but it has its place for different brands too. We work with Nike Strength. They use Get Early Access. That works well. Like Skims also uses Get Early Access, right? So brands that have like, if you're shopping at Skims, you actually probably want to have early access to the next drop. So that tends to work pretty well. So it can be kind of brand dependent. The idea of like having some autonomy. So we have one where it's like choose which one you want to win. And you can say like, I want to win this, and then you get that. So the idea of like having some autonomy also tends to work pretty well. A lot of it's like consumer psychology, which is interesting. So it's like, hey, even if I don't, it's like, for us, the balance is like, how do we make sure our brands are not giving out discounts more than they need to give out while still maintaining a really high opt-in rate? And finding that balance, something I think we've become really good at.
Yeah. And with that, like, what's your view on those like gamified pop-ups? Like, obviously, the spin to win, but there are also a bunch of others where people have to do something first to get it.
Yeah, no, honestly, those work really well. Like our spin to win crushes for our brands. We have one called like Plinko. So it's like the ball drops and it kind of goes through everything, and at the bottom it hits. We actually we have a slots pop up we made too. Like it's like you spin it and you get like 3 sevens and you get the discount. Those work really, really well. We have like choose your character. So put like 3 characters up, you choose one, and then you get a discount. Those work really well. Like all of the gamified pop-ups work well. Now, of course, like some brands, let's say a luxury brand, right? Like let's say, I don't know, like a luxury lingerie brand, they probably don't want to use a spin to win. Fine, totally fair. But like, if you're shipping, if you a CPG product and your CPG product kind of has like, it's kind of fun, like Graza, for example, is one of our customers. Like it's a fun brand, like 100% go for it, right? Because it not only it's on theme with the brand, but it actually does super, super well. So it's something we often recommend to our brands to try out. Like Portland Leather Goods, one of our other customers, they've tried out a bunch of really fun stuff and it's all done super well. So my thoughts on it are like, if it's okay with the brand ethos, 100%, you got to try those things. And honestly, at the company, at Alia, we innovate on this a lot. Like we know the value of it. So we always think about, hey, what's a new thing we could try out that hasn't been done before, but we think would have good impact? We test it on some large brands and then we roll it out to all of our customers.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, obviously, like there are those really, really like scammy spin to win pages, like where you see like you go to the website, you're already not sure whether it's a legit website or whether you're getting scammed, and then there's like this spin to win that appears, and you're like really sketched out. But then I've seen some brands that also like crush it with like really engaging and fun pop-ups where you just, even if you're not really interested in the discount, you just want to like test it out, like click on it, because it's just fun and it fits the brand. So you kind of have to find
the right, and exactly. Yeah, it's the balance. And like, it's really a balance. And we have our recommendations, and if a brand isn't comfortable, totally okay. But we have our recommendations for our brands.
Yeah. And when it comes to like obviously improving the pop-ups and also understanding how they play into the customer acquisition as a whole, and also how they support the customer acquisition cost for scaling brands, in your opinion, like which metrics should founders track and look at on a weekly basis?
Yeah, it's specifically for the pop-ups, right? One is like, how is this affecting your on-site CVR as well, right? Like, and something that I don't think any other pop-up tool does this besides us, but like you can see like, how does your spin to win versus your mystery discount, for example, how do each of those affect your on-site CVR? It's very important for us to care about, because we know if we actually heard on-site CVR, we're going to lose our own brands as customers. So we're going to be tracking that, especially if we're thinking about CAC. Like, hey, if you're spending a bunch of money on Facebook and when they come to the site, they're not converting, like what was the point of even really doing that? And, if they're coming from Facebook, but they don't convert, but you have a good pop-up and they're inclined to use the pop-up, at least you get an email, right? So at least you have something, and that can help with LTV. That can help inside of the welcome flow revenue. Let's say opt-in rate, of course, is important from pop-up standpoint, but let's say, how does it affect CVR? Number one, and number two, how does it increase or decrease your welcome flow revenue?
Yeah. What's a realistic before and after for a brand that just fixes their pop-up ideally in terms of revenue impact? What have you seen?
Yeah, that's a good question. We've seen from opt-in rate impact, we typically can 2x their opt-in rate. So if they start at 3% income and they get 6%. In terms of welcome flow revenue, we have a good amount of case studies on our website. I think we have one with Aviator Nation where we increased revenue by 100% on the welcome flow. Again, it's not gonna happen with every brand, but we've seen some pretty massive increases, because not only are we getting more customers on the list, but we're actually getting higher quality customers, because we use quizzes in the beginning of the flows of the pop-up to get quiz answers, and then in the quiz answers you can segment them inside of the welcome flow. So it's cool, because the pop-up information that you get from the customer can flow into your welcome flow, which makes more money for you.
Yeah, that is awesome. Can you get the quiz answers even if they don't submit the pop-up?
Yeah, you can. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So let's say you go on the site, you enter. It's like, hey, what are you shopping for today? Like t-shirts, leggings, jeans, and you answer jeans, but you don't input your email. Obviously, we can't get your email, but that survey answer we have and we store it. So you can use that to see how are people responding at a high level, and then once you do put in your email, it'll be attached to that quiz answer.
Yeah, that is awesome. That is a super valuable tool, because we always look for ways to get more information from the audience and from the customers coming to site. So with all of our clients, we're obviously using a post-purchase survey, and try to get during the checkout process, try to ask them some questions and send out email surveys to get more information. Because especially nowadays, with the advertising and messaging, you have to be sure that you speak the language of the customers and get the messaging on point, and also show them the products that they're really interested in, and that everything is custom tailored to your customers. So getting that data from the customers is also just super valuable. In terms of 100%. In terms of the timing and the rules, obviously there are a lot of different ways to trigger the pop-up. What's your default starting setup that you test with brands, in terms of when the pop-up appears and everything?
Oh yeah, so typically the best time to show the pop-up for the first time is at 5 seconds. So just on average, again, there's outliers, but on average it's 5 seconds. What we always test, and we know it works pretty well, it's something called smart trigger, right? So hey, let's say you're in a pop-up, it comes after 5 seconds and you click X because you don't want to fill it out right away. We actually have a way to trigger a pop-up for a second time in the same session. So let's say hey, you click on X of the initial pop-up, you then go browse the site, we see you click on a collections page, you click into a collection, you scroll a bit, we'll let you trigger the pop-up for a second time so that it's showing to the customers. Maybe when they're more ready to see it, right? Maybe initially they were not ready, but after some time they're now ready to see it and engage with it. So that's something we always do, is we'll kind of play around with when the initial pop-up is shown, and then we'll do a smart trigger for when it's shown for a second time. Now, and then for copy, we'll try, as you mentioned, hey, let's try mystery discount, see how that works. And then there's also the X button, right? So by placing the X button on the left side or the right side, or putting a delay on the X button, you can actually see higher opt-in rates. Now, of course, how does that affect conversion rates? We track that too, to make sure hey, when you change the X button, it's not affecting conversion rates, but it is increasing opt-in rates. Great. That's a great trial for us to do. I think those three things, right? One is, the timing, the copy, and then thinking about, hey, where do we put this button that they can escape? If you can put it in a more strategic place without affecting your on-site CVR, it's a net positive.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, you have to make sure that the customers are not annoyed that they can't remove the pop-up, and that they just leave the site again. And at the same time that they're not annoyed with seeing the pop-up over and over again, but at the same time that you just maximize as many and get as many people on the list as possible. To you, what would you say, what segmentation matters the most? I mean, with the pop-ups, there's also, I know there's ways to segment between you and returning customers. Is that something that you always split, or what is the strategy there?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we have in our pop-ups, you can show it to new site visitors and then returning site visitors, which is super nice. We like to actually show it to returning site visitors, but show them something else, right? So you probably don't need to give them a 20% discount. If you give your initial customers 20%, you probably don't have to give returning site visitors 20%. You can probably give them more like 5% or 10%, or maybe an ebook or something like that. That's actually valuable for them since they've already shopped once, or at least they've been to this site before. So yeah, you can actually flex that up and down, and it's something we've had a lot of success with, and most brands are totally okay and willing to try out something for the returning site visitors, as long as it's not giving them more of a discount than they need to be getting.
Across the top brands that you have insights in, that you work with, what do the best pop-up programs have in common?
Yeah, I'd say the best pop-ups that we have for some of our top brands, like Nike Strength, ILIA Beauty, Milk Makeup, HexClad, Breeze, Solo Wave, Hot Ones, Tom's, Peloton, would be a focus on testing, right? I think the best pop-up programs per se are the ones where the content, the copy, the images, the timing of the offers, and the timing of the pop-up, as well as the actual offers, are being tested. So we're figuring out hey, what actually works well? What can we A/B test to drive results? I can get more details on what tests work best, but at a high level, just generally testing. The ones who do that tend to see the best results.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, we see a similar pattern across the paid ads, the brands that do the most testing, that test the most creatives, ads, landing pages, funnels, they get the best results.
That
So
makes
that all
sense.
makes sense. And going a little bit more into the specifics of the testing, what kind of structure would you recommend there?
Yeah, I'd say start with a test for timing. That's figuring out, hey, what time should the pop-up show? Should it be at 2 seconds, 3 seconds, 5 seconds, 7 seconds? Should you show it at exit intent as well as on entrance, right? Now another test you can do is trying out mystery copy. So you've got a mystery discount. That can work well too. So I think those two tests off the bat are good. Now knowing what are the optimal times to test, what is the optimal copy to use for that AB mystery discount copy test, those are kind of more nuanced questions, and really it can be both brand dependent and dependent on what works in the industry. So for us, how we do this testing is we actually have this thing called smart testing, which runs through all of our recommended tests automatically for the brands. And it kind of will test the copy, the images, the delay time, and we'll do it in automated fashion. So we use some AI to make sure that it's testing the right things, ending the test, and starting a new test. So that's been super cool, and that's kind of what we use for our testing internally, and our customers can use it as well on their brands. And that's kind of been a big needle mover for us. So being in a state of constant testing is probably the best state to be in for most brands, because if A is performing better than B by 2%, even 1%, and you have enough site traffic, that 1 or 2% can be thousands of dollars for you.
Yeah, definitely. And all of that compounds over time. And with the AI testing, everything becomes way easier and faster. So is it now that you can do things completely on autopilot, or is there still some involvement from the founder or the team?
Yeah, so with the brands, so typically we'll like see what they're comfortable with. Like, hey, are you comfortable with us testing this delay time? Are you comfortable with us testing these images and this copy? So essentially, they just need to click on like approve for what they're comfortable with testing, and once they've approved the things they're comfortable testing, then it runs autonomously after that. It sticks within those bounds that the brand has approved, and it runs through all those options. Like it iterates and runs through all those options.
Interesting. That's awesome. And I mean, testing is obviously the most important thing. If a founder could only test one thing, what would it be? Would it be the timing?
I'd say timing would be a great thing to test. Yeah, that'd be important to figure out what time should it show. And then inside Alia as well, we have this thing called smart triggering, where based on essentially a model that we have, we figure out when we should show the pop-up for a second time. So of course it gets shown for the first time to all the site visitors, but if you show it for a second time, you actually see a pretty high opt-in rate of people that enter their email when they see it for a second time. So that is something that we do as well. But yeah, I'd say testing timing is great.
And if you would have to say like one timing that works best across like most brands, like what would that be?
Maybe 5 seconds.
Okay. And if you look at a brand that is like doing 1 million a month, and a brand that is doing 10 million a month, and a brand like that is doing even more, when it comes to like capture and retention, like what would you say? What are the biggest differences?
Yeah, between 1, 10, 100 a month. Yeah, we definitely work with brands with all those sizes. So I've seen that play out. I'd say the biggest difference is that they honestly have more team members on their retention team at different sizes, right? So there's like they're kind of more involved, they're a bit more thoughtful. I think, which is nice. And in terms of like what I've seen in their retention setup, I think the focus on pop-ups actually scale with the size of the brand pretty well, right? So like if a brand does say 1,000 a month, sorry, maybe 100,000 a month, like they're going to be a bit less focused on a brand that does 1 million. Then the brand that does 10 million is really focused on it. A brand that does 100 million is extremely focused on it. I think it's because as you grow, like an extra 1% on your pop-up opt-in rate is actually like very, very meaningful. So brands at those sizes tend to just care more, right? And they want to be more involved, which is completely fine with us. They want to test more. They understand the impact of even a 0.5% difference on an A/B split test. So I think that's a big difference. And then the second one might be like the focus on aesthetics. I think brands that are not as large like are less focused on the aesthetics of the pop-up, and they kind of just want pure results focus, which is totally fine with us too. But brands that are a bit larger, but somewhere between the 10 to 100 million monthly range, like they want to make sure it's very true to their brand book and the message that they want across everything is very important to those brands. So that's something else interesting that I've been seeing.
Yeah. And I mean that makes sense. I mean, like I'm not sure whether you have seen that, but on the ads, what we see quite often is if the brand is really small, they care a lot about branding and how the image looks, and they think everything has to be perfect. Then at a certain size, they realize that, like at for example 10 million, they realize that it doesn't matter that much, and as long as they get results, as long as they get sales, they're way more like willing to test different things and be more aggressive. But then at a certain point, once they're even bigger than that, branding becomes more and more important, and then they start focusing on it more again.
Yeah. No, that's so interesting, right? I think it's a really interesting curve. I was seeing the same thing where it's like, yeah, at the beginning you're like, you actually care a lot, and then you realize like, hey, actually I care more about revenue. And once you have the revenue, you're like, okay, let me go back to brand. It is definitely interesting. But luxury brands, fashion brands, apparel, I think they care about brand the whole way through. Whereas like supplement brands, uh, yeah, like health brands, they tend to kind of care in and out. But apparel like cares a lot throughout the entire journey.
Yeah. And with those brands that like want to stay premium and have like super polished branding, like with those, how do you build pop-ups that don't feel spammy but still get good results?
100%. Yeah. I mean, you can look at all the top brands as well. Like the brands that do the most revenue in the world, like Nike, Adidas, Puma, Walmart, they actually all have pop-ups on their site too. And I know those are not all high luxury brands, but like the idea of, hey, if a brand that large that's done all the research is using a pop-up, you should probably your brand should probably use one too, right? Now, how do you stay on theme? Like, our editor and is quite rich in the sense where like we can get very granular in design, which is nice. So those brands care a lot about making sure it fits their aesthetic, and our pop-ups can do that. So color, font, imagery, all that stuff, right? That's a piece of it. Now, when it comes to the offer, like those brands typically don't want, let's say, we have spin to win. We have this game called like Plinko. We have pick the character. We have a gambling thing. So we have some fun, more gamified things. Those brands don't want to do that. Totally fine. They want to have on brand, not like super spammy or, to your point, like looking like cheap. But they want it to just maybe be like, hey, join our mailing list. And there's actually not an incentive to join the mailing list, but because they're a luxury premium brand, actually people do want to learn about the next drop and they do want to join the mailing list. So they actually sometimes can offer nothing. Like, for example, this influencer, she's pretty huge. Her name is Alex Earl. She launched a brand on Shopify called Real Actives, sold out in the first 24 hours, went absolutely crazy. We launched with them with our pop-ups, which is cool. And now we're collecting emails to know when the next drop is.
Nice.
And yeah, that's been super cool. So brands like that kind of have a strong base, or they're focused on luxury, like they can sometimes get away with not giving out discounts on the pop-ups.
Yeah. People just want to be part of the list and know like what is going on, be up to date.
Yeah, exactly.
Now I want to quickly touch a little bit on the journey of the business getting acquired, and like some of the lessons that you learned from that. And what I'm interested in is like what led you to the decision to go to the acquisition from a bootstrapped position.
Yeah, that's a good question, right? So if you know Noah from Social Snowball, he's one of my good friends. He's an advisor of ours.
Yeah.
He got acquired by Dotdigital. He's the same business that acquired us. During his due diligence process with the business, he actually kind of kept bringing us up, and eventually made the introduction to me, their CEO of the business of Dotdigital. They do $100 million a year in revenue. We do close to around a tenth of that. And he made the introduction. I spoke with their CEO. We had a number of conversations, and they were quite interested. We were quite interested, and it kind of felt right because they're an ESP and we're a pop-up provider. So it's kind of natural. It's a natural home for us, I think. We weren't necessarily looking to sell the business right away, but they wanted to do a full exit, and the numbers made sense to us. The acquirers made sense. The timing made sense to us. So we decided to do it. I'm very happy we did it. I still think it's a great deal, and I think that we now have leverage to work with an ESP, which is cool, and like kind of see what comes out of that. I think we'll stay a Popup tool for a while. It's our bread and butter. We know there's a ton of more revenue we can make from it, and there's still more innovation in space. And honestly, I think we are the best provider in the space, and a lot of people know that. So by having that leverage, like we can do some cool things. Yeah. Happy to answer more questions specifically with the acquisition, but those are like my general thoughts. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of SaaS founders, they dream of getting acquired one day. Like, what do you think? What did you guys do differently that helped you with achieving that?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, we grew really quickly, right? So last year we went from 1 million to 8 million in revenue, completely bootstrapped. So we didn't raise a single dollar. We have a pretty involved founding team, and we have a great product. So I think really, it was like, hey, the growth is phenomenal. We've been profitable since day one. We've took on no money, so we have no investors. We also have no debt, and it's a clean business to acquire, right? Like fast growth, young founders who are smart and involved and are motivated to keep growing the business. But then the acquirer has the upside of having a big chunk in the growth that we're going to have. So I'd say like, hey, like if you grow quickly, people are interested. And if you can do it profitably, they're even more interested. And if you can do a bootstrap, they're even more interested, right? So we kind of had all three of those things, and it worked in our favor.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you look back at the journey from like just starting out to where you're at now, like what's one thing that you would do again, and what's one thing you would never do again?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I love talking about this part of the business. Like I think building a business is just such a phenomenal way to learn about the world. Like I think I just matured, and I don't even know. I got several. It feels like I got several PhDs in all different fields in the past 3 years to start the business, because you just do everything, right? And one thing I would 100% do again is work with my co-founders. So I have two co-founders, Bill and Cory. Actually, me and Cory were best friends in college. We met Gill in college too, and I'm very thankful I had and still have them and will have them as co-founders, I think, for the rest of my life, because shared sorrow is half the sadness, but shared joy is double the joy, right? So being able to share in the success and work through problems together makes this whole thing much more fun, and the hard times easier to bear. So I would definitely work with my co-founding team again, and I recommend any founders to get co-founders, because, I know you give up equity, but to me, I'd much rather have 30% of 60 million than 100% of 1 million, right? Like it's just better. So that's something I would do again. Something I would not do again. Man, I don't know. I feel like I enjoy the hard parts. Like I struggled through the hard parts, and maybe the stuff that I shouldn't have done, I still did because I learned from it. Let me think. I should real quick. I don't know. Honestly, like I made mistakes 100% in my journey, but I would make those mistakes again because it allowed me to learn. Like, so I'm glad I made a lot of mistakes. If I didn't, then I wouldn't mature and I wouldn't grow. So I kind of had to make those things,
Yeah. And that's awesome. I also think that like building a business is one of the best things that you can do for your personal development and for growing, because it just challenges the hell out of you. And it's very, very tough to do. And you get a lot of like feedback from like the market, from everyone. But it helps you grow super fast.
Yeah, and one other thing I would do as well is I started a business. I was doing sales. I would do sales again because there's no better, in my opinion, there's no better life lesson than doing sales, especially doing sales when no one wants to talk to you. Right now, sales is easier because we know we're well known in the space. We have brands. We have data to back it up. We got acquired, so people are like, okay, this is a real business. But when you have no customers, no funding, you don't know a single person in the industry, that sales call is very different from our sales calls today. But I would recommend doing sales as a young founder because, like, dude, there's no better rejection therapy than getting said no to 1,000,000 times a day. There's nothing better than it.
Yeah. I can relate to that. Did you do cold calling, or what was the?
Yeah, did cold calling, did cold emails. I live in New York City. I went door to door in New York City. I went to different people's shops here and knocked on their door and said like, "Hey, you interested?" And some people didn't take it too well. I would go to farmers markets. I used to do this. I still do it sometimes. Actually, I go to farmers markets because a lot of those are like smaller businesses, and I'll be like, hey, like, do you guys on Shopify? Can I chat to you, whatever, right? So like stuff like that was fun. And then I would get on all the sales calls. So when we started getting more traction, I would have like 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. back-to-back calls for 12 hours. And that was a whole different beast, right? It's a good problem to have. Now we have sellers and closers that take the calls. But that's also kind of part of the, the journey.
Yeah, it is. Awesome. Where can people follow you, learn more about you and the business?
Yeah, for sure. So our business URL for for getting a demo of our pop-ups or learning more about it is aliapopups.com. ALIA popups.com. I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter the most. So LinkedIn is just my first and last name, and then my Twitter is I am Shaan Arora. So I am and then my first and last name.
Perfect. Appreciate you hopping on.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.